Hey everyone, it's George Masri. I'm here with Mandy Branham. We're going to do a short video here for you. We're just going to talk about a few things related to real estate investing. One of the things that I really like about Mandy, she's one of the successful female investors, which is great. I really appreciate saying that because most of the classes that I go to, most of the events, it's usually men.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see you. There's a couple of other names that come up. So I know a little bit about you, but if you want to start, maybe just tell people a little bit about what you do and
Sure.
where you're at in your career.
Sure. I'm Mandy Branham. I am a wife, mother, sister, full-time real estate investor. I have been full-time since beginning of 2016. Just retired my husband, quote, quote, retired, not working any less than he was before, probably working harder now, about a month ago to our real estate business. And we first started investing in real estate 2007. We bought our first duplex on second mortgage on our primary residence at 8% interest. I actually just reflected on this last night with a young couple that's building their portfolio and finding it hard to get that second property, and I remembered what we went through. So 2007 and 2014, we were ready to build again, and we'd received a check from our first property for $38,000. And I was like, well, this is cool, but it's taken us 7 years to get $38,000. So that didn't replace either of our incomes, but it was more than we had received on any other investment. So I thought, there's something in this, and I need to do this more and more and more. And so we took that and we invested it in our education. So I'm a super big believer in education in all areas of your life. And then we bought our next one and bought our next one, and then the momentum just started. We started to attract partners, and so yeah, that's how I kind of got started. And I realized that I was working really hard for other people to get rich. And I thought, which is great for me to give to them, but when am I gonna work this hard on myself? And so one of my big quotes I always say is, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And if you're doing something every day, which I know is going to lead us into the next little realm, is then that's great. Then you've done what you need to do for your personal future. And we went to a Tony Robbins conference one time, my husband and I, and we took 2 weeks off. We went down. It was beautiful. It was just what we needed. But of those 2 weeks, 4 days, and if anyone's been to a Tony Robbins conference, they're like 12 to 18-hour days. You're exhausted. You pay for a hotel that you barely sleep in, right? And I said, your work is going to be grateful that you went to this conference. Which he was working on himself, but when he came back, he was a better employee, he's a better listener, better communicator, all those kind of things. So working on yourself benefits everybody in your circle. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I know it sounds like you started off kind of investing with your own money, and then you transitioned towards working with others, doing joint ventures, and I'm not sure if you're doing anything else, but can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So definitely our first couple properties were with our own capital, with second mortgages off of our properties, with refinance funds, with money that we had accumulated. We even at one point used 2 lines of credit that we had that were worth $10,000 each. So we borrowed that to be able to use it. And that was at the times that the banks, didn't necessarily care where the capital came from. And when I was ready to attract joint venture partners, I said to a mentor at the time, I'm like, how do I attract joint venture partners? And he stood there so relaxed with a smile on his face, and he's like, you're already doing it. Just keep being an active investor, every day pursuing something within the real estate world, and people are watching. And so my first joint venture actually had 3 people fall apart before the 4th one was like, yeah, I'm ready to do this, right? And I had this conversation with her, and I was all prepped. I'd mentally prepared myself. I'm going in there. I'm like, I'm getting this joint venture partner. And we had such a nice dinner with just another lady about the same age as me. We conversed, and I was like we're almost done, like our time here at dinner. I said, we really should talk about this real estate deal. And she was like, oh, that real estate deal? I'm in. Oh, yeah. I was like, what? Yeah. So really what she was watching for was me. And so it's all about me and my security and my, who I am and how I hold myself. That's what she invested in, was you. So it's sometimes to these new investors that are like, oh, I've got this great deal, but they're this newbie investor that has no education yet or just learning but has the enthusiasm, that you might have a hard sell. But to somebody who's actively doing it and putting in their own money, then that's when the attraction of joint ventures is much easier than a newbie. So yeah, and
it's very similar as a real estate salesperson. A lot of times when I meet with people, we'll sit down, we'll have a long conversation, and it has almost nothing to do with the real estate, but you just build trust with people, and then they end up working with you. You don't have to have a huge presentation or whatever else. They work with you because they like you and they trust you.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it makes
sense. It shows, how do you show up? What are you reading at night? And you're like, well, it doesn't really matter that I watch TV. And I was like, what if it does? Mm-hmm. What if you're watching some, sleazy whatever, because that's what you want to watch, but I choose to read a book about how to communicate better? Who's going to show up and attract a client or attract a joint venture better? Mm-hmm. Well, it's proven.
Right.
So, yeah,
Makes
good.
sense.
So wear the right clothes. You're always dressed so nice.
I
like it.
Appreciate it. Okay, so I'll get into one of the first questions here. What inspires you to invest and to do what you do?
Having more, having control of my financial future. Me having control. In 2007, when we bought our first rental property, which was weird that it happened at that time, my husband's in the automotive industry, so it just went down. So his company got sold, then it went into receivership, and then it's owned by the banks, and it was, he was getting overtime. The overtime was dropped. He went from 5 days a week. They went down to a shared work week. He was 4 days a week, and I was like, all of a sudden, our cushy little life that we had thought was our choice was taken away from us, and we had no control over it. And I thought, I didn't like that feeling that somebody else controlled it. So it inspired me to be able to say, how can I take control of my financial future? So this investor that we invested with for many years, and she did us very well. You know how they say that you are allowed to outgrow certain people on your power team? Well, I would say very nicely, she brought us to a great spot, but then we outgrew her. I realized one day she said that she didn't have any RSPs. And I thought, well, how are you being a financial advisor and you're advising us to do it, but you haven't done it yourself? And so I thought, where else are there people that are talking their talk and walking their walk? And real estate does that like all the time.
Right.
All the time. So
yeah, and you mentioned something important about taking control of your finances, your future through real estate. A lot of people, if they get fired from work or for whatever reason their income's cut off, they're going to be broke very, very quickly, and they have nothing to fall back on, so they're living paycheck to paycheck. When you have assets like that, you know that you've got something. You can sell a house that you own if you need to. You might be getting some income from your cash flow, whatever, so you're not really in that situation where you're in a corner if something happens to your job.
Absolutely. That's super smart. I think would almost say that 2 properties on top of your primary residence is base. Base. That's one for one kid, that's one for next. If you have 4 kids, you need 4 properties, whatever that kind of looks like. But you know what? It's just it's a staple these days. Like if you don't have it, you're not keeping up. Mm-hmm. You're not keeping up.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, you gotta have it. You gotta go for it. So
absolutely.
What do you think holds people back from investing?
Fear.
Fear? Yeah, that's it.
Maybe I should finish the question. Fear. They're like, oh my gosh, my uncle did it, or my friend of a friend's uncle's second cousin, and like the tenant wrecked the house.
Right.
And you're like, but in my mind, I'm like, So we had a tenant that took us for a little bit of a loop. To say not is naive of me, is to be lying. If somebody just asked me that today, well, are you afraid of what the tenants, are going to do to your units? And I was like, yeah, for sure, but not enough to say that it's not worth the while.
Right.
Right. So we had this tenant, and my husband, he overthinks stuff a lot.
Yeah.
So a fellow investor, he was like, Larry's the brake and I'm the gas pedal. Mm-hmm. So in this circumstance, he was analyzing all this stuff, and this tenant had taken us a loop for about $3,000. But he'd realized that in the 2 years that she'd been living with us, that she'd paid us $16,000. Mm-hmm. So he was like, so really, if you take $16,000, you minus 3, we're still up $13,000. Our mortgage has been paid every month, and we got rid of a tenant, and it might have cost us $2,000 or $5,000 to repair the unit. Mm-hmm. So we were still up money. So, and every time you repair a unit, the value of your asset's been brought up. Every time a tenant leaves and you're able to get current market rent, the value of your asset goes up. Right. So really, she was doing us favors in so many ways that we had to look at it differently than to be like, oh my gosh, she took off with $3,000 of our money. And you're like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. So fear is definitely 100%. So then as a joint venture or as a person that shares education with people like we're doing right here is ways to mitigate your risk. Not to say that it's not going to be there, but how do you mitigate something? So for a new investor looking to buy their first rental property, you get them this great rental property. You say, put property management in place. It's 10% of gross monthly rent. So if it's $2,000 that you're getting in rent, the property manager would be $200. And all that does is make sure, like, they're the experts on finding the tenants, screening the tenants, making sure that all these bad things don't happen. I'm not saying that it's not going to happen to a property management company, but they have more experience and more factors in place to be able to get rid of those issues. So definitely hire professionals around you, get the right people on board, and then watch. And then
a great way to mitigate risk is to buy well. So if you buy well and you get some issues or whatever, you're going to do okay no matter what, because that's really the most important thing. You make money when you buy and not when you sell. So.
Money, and that's when they, to be able to negotiate $10,000 off purchase price is a way that you can say, so big deal that those tenants took us for $3,000. Yeah. We actually made 10 when we bought it. This is reducing it by another 3. We're still up money.
Exactly.
But most people look at financial wealth as what's in the bank account. And one of my big teachings to new investors is to stop looking at what is my income and look at what is my net worth doing. Because Warren Buffett indicates what his wealth is declared by his net worth. Nobody ever knows what Warren or Bill Gates makes yearly, although they would be massive numbers, but they look at what their worth is. And so it's a very big transition for people to be able to take that, what's my income, to what's my net worth doing.
And to review it constantly, maybe once a year or twice a year, just to make sure you know what your portfolio is worth and what you're worth. So who are some of the people that you admire the most?
I have a couple mentors in the real estate realm. Andrew Brennan, definitely top-notch guy. Quentin D'Souza, my gosh. Ian Szabo, flipschool.ca, which doesn't exist anymore. They've moved past real estate to how can I give back in my wealth. Jim Rohn was a mentor that I turned to for listening to his audios. He's long gone, but his words still just ring true to me. Darren Hardy and a gentleman named John D. Martini. He's a human behavioral specialist. He really has given me a perspective shift. Cool. To be able to say, don't look at this like it's hard and difficult. Look at what are the gifts that are involved in this situation, and so you kind of are able to overcome things a little easier.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, those are great mentors. A lot of people talk about Jim Rohn and I guess some of the Canadian guys like Quentin D'Souza and whatever. I just recently read his book actually.
Did you?
So,
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what's your best advice for young investors and entrepreneurs?
Surround yourself with like-minded people, 100%. If there is an investing group, if there is, meetups, coaching, so I talk to people and I say, put your investor hat on, because there are times that we're going to be around our family and friends and we're going to be discussing mortgage rates and they're like, oh my gosh, you paid 3.2? Well, I got it from this bank at 2.9 and all this kind of stuff. And there I am with my real estate investor hat on, and I was like, you got qualified for a mortgage at 4%? High five, right? Because rates don't necessarily mean something if a bank's going to be able to lend you money. So if you get into this room full of people that are high-fiving over 4% interest with a qualified 80% loan-to-value mortgage, you kind of go, oh, this isn't what my family function sounds like. So by surrounding yourself with the right people. Another one, we went out for drinks one time, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have a frozen pipe story. And the other two were like, oh my gosh, let's see whose is worse. So it's not, so sometimes you feel by yourself that you're the only one dealing with a hard closing or a tenant issue or a frozen pipe issue or a financing issue. But when you're surrounded by like-minded people, so my frozen pipe story wasn't the worst. So mine was, there was a frozen pipe, Larry went in and he fixed it, and there was a little bit of water in the basement, no big deal. Mm-hmm. The other guy was an agent, and it was 2 days into the property was vacant, but it had only been vacant for 2 days, and there was literally a skating rink in the basement, like 3 inches, solid ice. He said, seriously, you could have brought your skates down there. Yeah. The other guy goes, the town called me to say that there's water rolling out my front door onto the sidewalk. Wow. So he had a frozen pipe on more of the main level, whatever the house was situated, mm-hmm. and the water was finding its way out the front door, mm-hmm. that the city had to call him. So I mean, you're learning from all of this stuff, but you all of a sudden don't feel alone. Mm-hmm. You're not alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And somebody says, well, yours is only going to cost, $2,000 to repair, and the other guy's saying, well, mine's going to be, I got to do all the basement and it's just all of a sudden you go, oh, okay. It's not such a bad thing when you're in the right group of people. So,
exactly.
100%.
Yeah, sometimes you think your problems are the worst thing ever, and then you realize people have been through it many times, and it's just part of doing business.
That's right. Yeah. So the more reassurance you can find from those kind of things, the better, mm-hmm. right? The less fear there is, because it's not the fear of the unknown, because it's not unknown anymore.
Right.
You've heard it from somebody on stage told it, somebody in the circle told
mm-hmm.
it, somebody whatever. So yeah, definitely investing in yourself and mm-hmm.
and being around like-minded people. Not only can you learn from their experiences, but they can sometimes set you up with other people that can help you either get joint venture partners, or they can send you a list of contractors or whatever, and it can really be beneficial to you.
Paralegals,
yeah.
Right? You're like, you think there you are dealing with this whole thing, and you're like, again, another a great new investor. Put a paralegal on your team. Don't pretend that you can go to the board. If you were trying to do it yourself and you picked the wrong tenants and they're taking you for a loop or whatever it might be, hire the paralegal so that they can at least go to the board, represent you, and get this, kill it as fast as it needs to be killed. Stop the bleeding in that tenant wound. Definitely another good person to have on your team. Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, maybe we'll do one more question. How do you feel about competing with other investors, or do you even have that mindset? Because we often will go to a meeting or something, and then there's 3 or 4 people looking for joint venture partners, the exact same thing you're looking for potentially.
Yep.
So how do you feel about that?
You know what? There is so much money out there mm-hmm. that we actually need everybody to be, eager investors to be able to get it all invested. Seriously, there's more than enough money. So I tell myself that often so that I don't have the keep it all to myself. Mentor in town, we were very open with, hey, there's a new property. Do you want it or do I want it? Now, I mean, for 2 years, I would tell you that 80% of the properties in our local area were bought by either him or I. Okay. And then another couple investors started to come, and it kind of changed the dynamic of the way that things were going, which is fine. Competition is good. Competition brings up your best game. Mm-hmm. But I also think for joint venture side, investors are looking for different things. I have very openly said to a couple investors, if my strategy doesn't work, I know there's a joint venture out there that would be happy to accept the split or the strategy that you're looking for, but it doesn't fit with me. Mm-hmm. So good, go ahead. I'm not disappointed. Go and find somebody that this strategy does fit for, and know that you can say next, right? Mm-hmm. Next. Right. What's next? But I'm always prepared. I also kind of think that money flows to those who are, ready and open to the opportunities. So I just always prepare myself for whether it be a Facebook message that says I've got a property, would you like to buy it, or it's a joint venture that says, hey, I'm interested in your next deal, just give me a call and let me know. It takes time. It takes a lot of time. So I'm open to competition. I think it brings up the value of my properties. It brings up, brings me my A game. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, and so can you maybe just share how you can help people, what your services include, and then how people can contact you if they want anything?
So I used to talk about doing joint venture coaching and consulting. And I kind of did a time analysis on the funds that it would require. And then, you know, when somebody takes on coaching, like we know in all things, you've got the people that are like they're the action takers again and again and again. And then there's those people that just kind of, you know, twiddle away and they're excited, but then they never actually do anything with it. And I thought, well, that's not the kind of coaching that I want to offer. So I actually don't offer per se a coaching fee. I say, come on board, buy a property with me, and you will learn my systems. You'll get to hear how I talk to my partners, or like how I talk to them as partners if they're looking to be a working partner, how I talk to my power team, what I say, all my different systems, my joint venture agreements, and for that they're actually making money to invest in coaching with me. So I'm mandybrenham.com. We can put a link to an email, which is all on the website, and that's that.
Sounds good. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Anything else I'd like to add? Yes. Find a market. Become a market expert. Wherever you decide to work, wherever you are going to invest, whether you want to be close by or you're okay to be distant or whatever, find a market, pick it, and stay in it. I have a lot of people that are like, well, I'm not sure if I want, this one couple I talked to, I'm not sure if I want Edmonton or if I want, you know, and the husband was looking in like Nova Scotia. I was like, you guys can't decide on single family, multifamily, or what, let alone which province you want to invest in. So there's just sometimes that people just get so out here that, you know, it just say, you know what, look at, just come right back down. You've got, you know, $400,000 worth of qualifying space. You've got the $80,000. Where can I go to buy a duplex or whatever you're looking for $400,000, and work backwards. So, you know, for $400,000 these days, you're not in the GTA, you know. So sometimes if you work backwards, you'll know exactly. But then don't go too far out that you think, well, I'm going to go to, you know, this unknown little spot to be able to make my money go further, because that's not necessarily where it is. So find a market. Research that market, pick that market, and stay in that market, and then, you know, go out from there as you grow. Right. As you grow. So yeah.
Well, you're full of knowledge. I know there's tons that you can cover. It's great. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope it was beneficial to you. I know Mandy's always about trying to bring value to people, and I feel the same way. So if if you feel like there's any topics you want to cover or you want us to cover or discuss, then please feel free to let us know. I'm sure we'll be happy to share some more information with you. So, and that's it. And hopefully we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thank you.